Questions. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a man who never made a mistake. And then he woke up. Questions. That man was me, in my dreams, a laughter pause, friends. Questions. We all make mistakes, sometimes small ones like spilling tea on someone's shirt, and sometimes big ones like spilling words from our mouth that questions stain someone's heart. Those questions. But here's the problem. We live in a world where people say basari faster than they type lol in a chat and mean it less. Today, questions. Let's explore the art of apologizing, how to say sorry and mean it. Once a young man broke his friend's favorite mug. Questions. He quickly said, "So sorry bro, it's just a mug, I'll get another one." The friend smiled, but never called him again. Why? Post questions. Because the mug wasn't just ceramic, it was an emotion. Lesson. People don't just care about the thing you broke. Post questions. They care about the feeling you broke. Two monks were walking when they saw a woman stuck at a river bank. Questions. The elder monk carried her across. Hours later, the younger monk said, "We monks are not supposed to touch women." Questions. Why did you carry her? The elder monk smiled. Why left her at the river? Why are you still carrying her in your mind? Is sometimes questions. We apologize. But to ties, we keep carrying guilt, punishing the mistake brand for ourselves. Apologize sincerely, make amends. Questions. And then let it go. Post questions. You see, my friends, most of us treat the word basari like a quick sneeze. Who sneeze? It just comes out automatically. Something goes wrong. Questions. And before we even understand what happened, the word asari jumps off our lips like an uninvited guest at a wedding. Questions. And just like that, the apology is over before even began. But let me ask you this. Questions. If you yourself don't know what you're apologizing for, how will the other person know that you truly mean it? Questions. Have you noticed how in our daily life we sometimes bump into someone in a crowd, and without even looking up we say, "So sorry." Questions. While our eyes are still on our phone. Or maybe we send a quick basari text with an emoji. Questions. Hoping that will magically patch up a hurt heart. But does it really work? No. Questions. Because an apology is no fire extinguisher just to put out emotional flames for the moment. Questions. It's a bridge you build to restore a relationship, and a bridge takes time, thought, and effort. Let me share a story. Questions. A friend of mine once forgot to attend another friend's important presentation. Questions. He remembered only when he saw pictures of the event line. Immediately he typed, "Basari ya, couldn't make it. Was busy." And now, questions. Tell me honestly, if you were on the receiving end of that message, would you feel better? Of course not. Questions. It sounds more like an excuse than an apology. The friend on the other side didn't just miss your physical presence. Questions. They missed your emotional support. And no, a fast food style apology can fill that emotional gap. That's where the pause comes in. Questions. Before saying a sorry, you take a breath. Not just for your lungs, but for your mind and your heart. Think, what exactly went wrong? Questions. How did my action or inaction affect the other person? What might they be feeling right now? Questions. This short pause transforms an apology from being a reflex into a conscious act of empathy. Think about it like this. Post questions. When you accidentally drop a plate in your kitchen, you don't immediately rush to say sorry to the plate, walk away. Questions. You first stop, assess the damage, pick up the pieces carefully, and clean up the mess. Why? Well, because if you rush in blindly, questions, you might step on the shards and hurt yourself more, or leave sharp pieces for someone else to get hurt later. Questions. Apologies work the same way. If you rush in without awareness, you can actually leave behind emotional shards that hurt more later. Questions. Now, here's a little daily life challenge for you. The next time you feel the urge to say sorry instantly, don't. Questions. Just wait for a few seconds, observe the moment. Replay in your mind what just happened. Ask yourself, if I were them, post questions. How would I be feeling right now? You'll be amazed how these extra seconds will change on your voice, tone, the words you choose, questions, and even the sincerity in your eyes when you finally speak. Let me give you an example from family life. Questions. Imagine your child is upset because you missed their school play. If you rush in and say, "Sorry, Bear, I was busy with work," whose questions? Either child hears two things. First, you weren't there. Second, work was more important. But if you pause, kneel down to their level, post questions, look them in the eye, and say, I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. I know you must have really wanted to see your performance. Questions. That was important to you, and I feel bad I missed it. That's a different energy altogether. Questions. The second apology acknowledges their feelings. The first just excuses yours. Questions. Pausing before you apologize also has another benefit. It stops you from giving half-hearted or sarcastic apologies. Post questions. You know the kind. Defined. Sorry, happy now. That's not an apology, Nalu. That's a subtle way of saying, but I still think I'm right. Questions. But I'm doing this to shut you up. And believe me, post questions. That kind of apology doesn't heal anything. It just adds another layer of hurt. Even in professional life, questions. The pause makes a big difference. Let's say you made an error in a team project that caused delays. Less if you rush to your boss and say, questions. Sorry, I messed up. You sound unprepared and careless. But if you pause first, understand exactly when wrong. Questions. Think about its impact and then say, I'm sorry, I didn't double check the dare, and it caused delays for the team. Questions. I understand how this affected everyone, and I've already started fixing it. Questions. Now your apology comes with maturity and responsibility. One of my mentors once told me, questions. Never apologize from your mouth first. Always apologize from your mind and your heart. Then let your mouth speak. Questions. That's what the pause is. It's the gap between reaction and reflection. Questions. And in that gap lies the difference between a sorry that is heard and a sorry that is felt. You see, friends, questions. Life is full of moments where we unintentionally hurt people, not because you're bad, but because we are human. Questions. The pause is a gift we give ourselves and others. It's the moment we choose to put our ego aside and our empathy forward. Post questions. It's the little space where we spanking, think about defending ourselves and start thinking about understanding them. Questions. And when you start practicing this pause before you apologize, something magical happens. Questions. People stop hearing just the word sorry and start feeling the sincerity behind it. Questions. They realize you didn't just throw a word like them a bandage on a wound. You actually truly took time to see where it hurt and why. Questions. So next time, remember this. Don't let sorry be the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Questions. Let understanding be the first thing that enters your heart. Only then will your apology not just sound right. It will feel right. Questions. And in the end, that's the art we're talking about. Not the art of saying sorry fast, but the art of sorry well. Questions. Many people think saying the sorry is like pressing the reset button in a video game. Once you say it, everything goes back to normal. Questions. But real life is not like a game. In life, you don't just press reset, you rebuild. Questions. And the first brick in that rebuilding process is acknowledging the hurt. When someone is hurt, questions. They're not just upset about the event, they're upset about what that event made them feel. Questions. If you skip over that feeling and rush straight to the sorry, questions. It's like a doctor handing you medicine without even checking what's wrong. Yes, you've given something, but is it the right thing? Questions. Will it heal the pain? Probably not. Let's take a simple example. Suppose you forgot your best friend's birthday. The next day, questions. You call and say, "Oh, sorry, I forgot." Anyway, how's words are now? Technically, you've apologized, but you've not acknowledged the hurt. Post questions. You haven't said, "By no birthdays matter to you, and I wasn't there to celebrate. You must have been important to me." Questions. And that's not true. You see the difference. One is a casual apology. The other recognizes the emotional wound you caused. Post questions. Acknowledging the hurt is not about exaggerating the situation. It's about validating it. Questions. You may not think it was a big deal, maybe missing a call, arriving late. Questions. Or forgetting a small detail. But if it mattered to the other person, then it matters in the apology. Often, people argue. Questions. "Oh, but I didn't mean to hurt them." My friends, intent is important, but impact is what people feel. Questions. You might accidentally step on someone's foot, Your intention wasn't to hurt them. But if they're in pain, you still say, I'm sorry, questions. That must have hurt instead of relax, I didn't mean it. I remember a colleague who once made a sarcastic joke in a meeting, questions. Everyone laughed except one person. She went quiet for the rest of the day. Closed questions. The colleague realized later that Werther's had touched an old wound, something personal. Now he could have brushed it off saying, questions. Boy, it was just a joke. But instead, he sat down with her and said, though I realize my joke might have hurt you. I'm sorry. Post questions. I didn't think about how those words might feel from your side. She didn't just forgive him, she thanked him for noticing. Questions. That's the power of acknowledgement. When you acknowledge hurt, you tell the other person, I see you. Questions. I understand what this did to you. And that simple act makes people feel valued. Questions. It's like putting a hand on someone's shoulder when they're in pain. You're not fixing the problem instantly. Questions. But you're showing you care enough to stand with them in it. In relationships, this is even more crucial. Questions. Imagine a husband forgets an anniversary. If he says, sorry, I forgot, it sounds like a calendar issue. But if he says, questions, I know this day means a lot to you because it's our special milestone and I wasn't there to celebrate it with you. Questions. That must have hurt. Now the apology connects emotionally. The first version is about his action. The second is about her feeling. Questions. A great example is parents talk to children. If a parent scolds a child unfairly and later just says, sorry for shouting, questions, either child may still feel misunderstood. But if the parent says, I'm sorry for shouting at you earlier, questions, I realize you were just trying to help and I hurt your feelings, the child learns that their emotions matter. Questions. That acknowledgement teaches empathy more than 100 lectures could. Sometimes, questions. Acknowledging hurt is uncomfortable because it forces us to face the truth that we were the cause of someone else's pain. Questions. Our ego resists it. We might think, if I admit their pain, it means I was wrong. But here's the secret. Post questions. Acknowledgement is not about humiliation, it's about humility. And humility strengthens relationships far more than pride ever will. Questions. Let's look at it from the other side. Have you ever been hurt by someone and they said, sorry? Questions. But never recognized what actually hurt you. You probably felt unsatisfied, like the chapter never really closed. Questions. That's because without acknowledgement, an apology feels incomplete. Like reading a story without the ending. Questions. There's also a subtle skill in how you acknowledge hurt. You have to be specific instead of saying, post questions, I'm sorry I hurt you, which sounds like you're not sure if there's any real reason in apology. Say, questions, I'm sorry you hurt you when I spoke to you in that tone yesterday. I can see Hansao that hounded disrespectful questions. Specificity shows you understand, and understanding builds trust. Here's a daily life scenario. Questions. Imagine you accidentally break your neighbor's potted plant. You could just say, sorry, I broke your plant. Or you could say, questions. I'm sorry I broke your plant. I know you've been growing it for years. It must be upsetting to see it gone. Questions. Either plant may be gone, but the relationship will remain intact, maybe even stronger, because you value the sentiment. Questions. Acknowledging hurt is like turning on the light in a dark room. The pain might still be there, but now you can see it clearly. Questions. And when people feel seen, they feel safe enough to forgive. So remember this. A true apology is not about you. Questions. It's about the person you hurt. It's no performance to make yourself look good. Questions. It's a bridge to make the other person feel understood. When you acknowledge their hurt, post questions. You're not just fixing a problem, you're healing a heart. And sometimes the worth more than anything else you could give. Questions. When something goes wrong, most people's first instinct is not to take responsibility. It's to find a way to share it, soften it. Questions. Or shift it. We say things like, Larry, but you also, or I didn't mean to. It just happened, or but if you hadn't done that. Questions. I wouldn't have reacted this way. We add conditions, explanations, and justifications. Questions. But here's the truth. The moment you after your apology, or you erase the apology. Questions. Taking full responsibility is like standing under the bright light of truth, carrying an umbrella of excuses. It's not easy. Questions. Because it exposes you. But it also earns you something priceless. Trust. When people see you owning up completely to your actions. Questions. They realize you're not here to protect your ego. You're here to protect the relationship. Post questions. Let me give you a simple example from daily life. Imagine you spill coffee on one's shirt at a cafe. If you say, post questions, but you are standing too close, you're blame him, basically them, for their own stain. It's not an apology. It's a polite accusation. Questions. Now, if instead you say, I'm so sorry, I wasn't paying attention and I spilled coffee on your shirt. Let me pay for the cleaning. Questions. Either changes everything. The second one takes ownership without shifting the burden onto them. Questions. I once met a man who told me a story from his early career. He was managing a small team and during a project. Questions. He gave the wrong instructions to one of his team members. That mistake cost them an important client. His first impulse was to say, host questions. Well, you should have double-checked with Minnie before doing it. But something in his heart told him that would destroy trust. Questions. So he went to his team and said, this was my mistake. I gave them unclear instructions, and that caused us to lose the client. Questions. I will talk to the client and see if we can repair the damage, but I want you to know, no, I take full responsibility for this. Questions. Years later, he said that moment earned him lifelong respect from his team. Why? Questions. Because leaders who own their mistakes inspire loyalty. In personal relationships, the same principle applies. Questions. Imagine a husband and wife have an argument. The husband says something hurtful. Later, he comes back and says, questions. I'm sorry I said that, but you made me angry. But that's not ownership, that's outsourcing blame. A better approach is, questions. I'm sorry I said those words. It was wrong of me to let my frustration turn into hurtful speech. I take full responsibility for that. Questions. You notice the difference. The first shifts fault, the second takes it. Taking full responsibility is also a sign of maturity. Questions. Children often blame others because they fear punishment. Adults sometimes blame others because they fear judgment. Questions. But wise people know that the fastest way to repair a mistake is to stop defending it. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, questions. It can feel like you're losing face, but in reality, you're gaining credibility. People may forget details of the mistake, questions, but they will remember the courage you showed in owning it. Questions. Sometimes we taking full responsibility means accepting blame for everything, even for things we didn't do. Questions. That's not what I'm saying. It means taking full responsibility for your part in what happened. Questions. If two people are involved in a conflict, each one has a share in the events. By owning yours fully, without diluting with theirs. Questions. You model integrity, and that integrity often inspires the other person to reflect on their own part too. Questions. Let me share another real-life situation. Questions. A friend once told me about a time she missed an important meeting because her colleague gave her the wrong time. Post questions. She could have easily blamed him in front of the boss. Instead, she said, "When I'm sorry for missing the meeting." Questions. I should have double-checked the time and made sure I was there. The boss didn't scold her. In fact, questions. He praised her professionalism. Later, her colleague admitted his mistake and apologized too. Post questions. See how ownership creates a ripple effect. One of the most damaging phrases in an apology is, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Questions. On the surface, it sounds polite, but in reality, it's a way of avoiding responsibility. Questions. You're not apologizing for what you did. You're making their feelings the issue. Full responsibility would sound like, questions. I'm sorry for I said what I said that made you feel that way. It was insensitive of me. In the first version, you stay safe. Questions. In the second, you step into the fire of truth, and that's where healing begins. Questions. Taking full responsibility also means being ready to make amends. Words are powerful, but actions prove you mean them. Questions. If you break something, offer to fix it. If you damage trust, commit to rebuilding it. When you take ownership, post questions, you're just saying you're not guilty, you're saying I'm accountable. And accountability is the glue of strong relationships. Questions. Think about the people you trust in life. Are they perfect? Probably not, but they're honest. They don't hide when they mess up. Questions. They don't sugarcoat their faults. They face them head on. And because they do, you believe in them. Not because they never fall. Questions. But because they always stand up and owned when they do. So next time you need to apologize, check yourself. Questions. Are you about to add a but after you're sorry? Post questions. Are you tempted to spread the blame like butter on toast so it doesn't stick only to you? Resist the urge. Stand there. Questions. Even if it feels a little raw, and say, this was my fault, and I'm sorry. You might think that makes you weak. In truth, questions. It makes you stronger than most people ever dare to be. When you take full responsibility, questions, you're not just repairing a mistake. You're building a reputation that says this is someone who can be trusted. Questions. Even when they fail, and in the long run, that is worth far more than the never making a mistake at all. Questions. An apology without empathy is like a flower without fragrance. It may look nice, but it doesn't touch the heart. Questions. Empathy is the soul of a sincere sorry. Post questions. It's the moment when you stop looking at the situation only through your own eyes and start looking through the eyes of the person you've hurt. Questions. Without that, an apology can sound robotic, emissive, hollow, or even dismissive. Many people apologize to clear their conscience. Questions. Not to heal the other person's heart. They say the words, but they don't enter the other person's world. Questions. But the real magic happens when you step into their shoes, even if it feels uncomfortable. Questions. Because only then can you truly understand what your actions meant to them. Let me share a small story. Questions. A boy accidentally broke his sister's favorite toy. He quickly said, sorry, I'll buy you another one. But she didn't stop crying. Questions. Why? Because to her that toy wasn't just plastic and paint. It was the last gift their grandmother gave her before she passed away. Post questions. The boy thought the problem was about the object. The sister's pain was about the memory. If he had sat with her, questions, listened to her talk about their grandmother, and said, I'm so sorry, and sorry, I understand this toy means a lot because it's from Grandma. Questions, she would have felt understood. That's empathy, not fixing the problem first, but feeling with them. In daily life, questions. We often rush to solve problems instead of feeling them. Someone tells us they are hurt, and we respond with solutions, logic, questions, or comparisons. Oh, come on, it's not such a big deal. You'll get over it. But when you do that, you're dismissing their emotions, questions, Empathy says, I hear you. I understand why this matters to you. It doesn't matter if it would matter to you. Questions. What matters is that it matters to them. Think about this. When you have a bad day and you tell a friend, post questions. Do you want to mediate tell you what you should have done differently? Or do you want them to just nod, listen, and say, post questions, oh, that must have been tough. Most of the time we don't need someone to solve our pain, we just need someone to see it. Post questions. That's why in an apology, empathy is more powerful than explanation. In relationships, questions. Empathy can turn this moment into a healing moment. Imagine a husband forgets to pick up groceries his wife asked for. Questions. Members. Without empathy, I'm sorry. I was too busy at work. A Burwood. I'm sorry. Post questions. I forgot to get the groceries. I know you were counting on me because you had a long day and now you'll have to go yourself. Questions. That must be frustrating. The second version not only admits the mistake but also recognizes the inconvenience it caused. Questions. That acknowledgement is what softens the hurt. I've seen this in workplaces too. Questions. A manager once gave a junior employee a last-minute assignment, causing her to cancel her family dinner. The next day, questions. The manager could simply sighed for the late request. Ian said, I'm sorry for us asking you so late yesterday. Post questions. I realize it made you miss your family time, and that's not fair to you. Questions. That simple recognition of her sacrifice turned irritation into respect. Questions. The beauty of empathy is that it bridges the gap between an intention and impact. You may have never meant to hurt someone. Questions. But if your action did hurt them, empathy is the bridge that says, I see how it affected you and I care. Without that bridge, questions. Even the most polite apology feels like a one-way street. Sometimes expressing empathy means listening more than talking. Post questions. You might start your apology and then let the other person share how they felt. Resist the urge to defend you and yourself while they speak. Questions. Jocelyn. Nod. Let them know their feelings have space. You don't have to agree with everything they say. Questions. But you do have to acknowledge that those feelings are real to them. A friend of mine once told me, questions are the best apologies, the ones where the other person talks more than you do. I think that's true. When you listen deeply, questions, you show you care more about their heart than your own defense. And often, just being heard is the beginning of healing. Post questions. Even in small, everyday situations, empathy changes everything. Imagine you accidentally interrupt someone during a meeting. Questions. You could say, sorry, I didn't realize you were speaking. Or you could say, sorry for cutting you off. Questions. You were making an important point, and I didn't give you the space to finish. Please go ahead. Questions. The second version not only apologizes, but also affirms the value of what they were saying. And here's the thing, questions. Empathy is not about exaggerating or pretending to feel something you don't. Questions. It's about genuinely trying to see the situation from their side. If you're sincere, it will show in your voice, your body language, questions, and your words. If you fake it, they'll know, because empathy isn't just in the mouth, it's in the eyes and the heart. Questions. Some people think empathy makes them weak. They believe showing too much understanding will make others take advantage of them. Questions. But in truth, empathy is a sign of strength. It takes courage to step outside your own perspective and sit in someone else's. Questions. And when you do, people see you as not just someone who apologizes, but someone who truly cares. So when you apologize, post questions. Don't just say you're sorry for what you did. Show that you understand what it felt like life for them. Let them know you've walked questions, even for a moment in their shoes, because in the end, questions, post questions. Empathy is what turns sorries from a sound into a feeling. And feelings are what people remember long after words fade. Questions. Ego is like a wall we build between ourselves and others. When we hurt someone, that wall gets taller. Questions. And when it's time to apologize, ego is the stubborn, unearned bricklayer who says, "But don't you dare take a brick out." If you apologize, questions, they'll think you're weak. But here's the truth. An apology doesn't make you smaller. Questions. It makes you bigger in the other person's heart. Dropping the ego is not losing a questions. It's choosing the relationship over your pride, the connection over your position. Questions. I once heard a story about two neighbors who had a petty argument over a tree that grew between properties. Questions. One insisted the tree more toward his side and belonged to him. The other said it leaned toward her side and was hers. Questions. Weeks went by and they stopped greeting each other. Finally, one day, one of them decided to apologize. Questions. Not because the tree was less important, but because the friendship was more important. He walked over and said, questions. I've been holding on to my point more than our friendship. I'm sorry. That one moment melted weeks of tension. Questions. The tree remained where it was, but the wall between them was gone. Dropping the ego means asking yourself a simple question. Questions. What am I trying to protect here? My heart or my image? Most of the time it's the image. We fear that if we admit we were wrong, questions, people will see us as us. But here's a secret. They already know we're flawed. They've known since the day they met us. Questions. The apology doesn't expose something new. It shows something rare. Humility. In daily life. Questions. Ego can sneak into even the smallest interactions. Maybe you snap at your colleague in a meeting. Later, questions. You realize you were out of line, but your ego whispers, but just let it go, they probably forgot. But did they? Chances are, questions. They didn't forget, they just filed it away as a moment when you cared more about winning than respecting. Questions. Ego-free, but I'm sorry for the way I spoke earlier. It was disrespectful. It could repair that instantly. Questions. But the ego hates instant repairs. It prefers slow rotting. I remember in my early working years. Questions. I once messed up a task because I didn't follow instructions. My senior was upset, and instead of apologizing right away, questions, I tried to defend my mistake. But well, I thought, if I figured you meant, every sentence was an attempt to protect my ego, questions, and each one made me sound more careless. Eventually, questions. I realized that every extra word I said to defend myself was another nail in the coffin of my credibility. Questions. The moment I dropped the ego and said, I'm sorry, I didn't follow your instructions properly, it's my fault. Questions. The conversation turned. My senior didn't scold me further. Instead, he helped me fix the mistake. Questions. Dropping the ego also means not keeping score. Some people treat apologies like a competitive sport. To last time, I apologize first. Questions. So now it's their turn. This thinking turns relationships into a scoreboard, and love, friendship, questions, and respect are not games you win, they're bonds you nurture. If something you did hurt someone, questions. It doesn't matter who apologized last time. If you value the connection, you take the step, regardless of the scoreboard. Questions. Think about family life. A father once told me he used to have arguments with his teenage son. Questions. Both would stay silent for days afterward, each waiting for the other to say sorry first. One day, the father thought, questions. So what am I teaching my son? That pride is more important than peace. That evening, he went to his son and said, questions. I'm sorry for raising my voice earlier. I should have handled it differently. The son, surprised, immediately apologized back. Questions. Dropping the ego opened the door both for them to walk through together. Ego often disguises itself as self-respect. We think, questions. If I apologize first, they'll think they were right and I was wrong. But self-respect and ego are not the same thing. Questions. Self-respect is knowing your worth. Ego is inflating your worth so much that there's no room left for others. Questions. Apologizing doesn't shrink your worth. It shows you have enough worth to admit when you're wrong. Sometimes the ego will fight hard. Questions. Especially when you feel the other person was partly at fault. But remember, questions. An apology is not about deciding who was 70% wrong and who was 30% wrong. It's about owning your part completely, without conditions. Questions. If you wait for them to admit their share before they're sure you admit yours, you could be waiting forever. In that waiting, questions, the relationships quietly bleeds. Dropping the ego requires vulnerability. It's standing there without your shield, saying, oh yes, questions. I made a mistake, and I care enough about you to admit it. A vulnerability is risky, but it's also magnetic. Post questions. People are drawn to those who can be honest about their flaws because it makes them feel safe to be honest about theirs. Questions. I've noticed something interesting. People rarely remember the exact words you said in an apology. Questions. But they always remember the posture of your heart. When you apologize with ego still in the room, post questions. They can feel it, the stiffness in your voice, the hesitation in your eyes. But when you apologize with the ego left outside, questions, your sincerity comes through in every word, every pause, every gesture. So, the next time your ego tells you to hold back, post questions. Ask yourself, do I want to win this moment or save this relationship? Dropping the ego, my ego, might feel like losing at first. Questions. But you're not losing anything except a heavy load never knew needed to carry. In return, you gain peace, trust, questions, and a deeper connection with the person you care about. Because in the end, ego may help you in arguments, questions, but humility helps you in hearts. And hearts, my friends, are far more valuable than victory